We start with a developing story from the Gulf of Oman. Explosions have been reported on 2 tankers in the key Middle Eastern waterway. The Japanese operator of one of the tankers says it was attacked twice with some sort of shell. Although the situation is not yet clear, Japan's trade minister has described it as a major security incident.
I have just been informed that 2 vessels carrying shipments related to Japan were attacked near the Strait of Hormuz.
The trade minister says all of the crew from both ships have been rescued. A Tokyo-based shipping company has confirmed that one of its tankers, called Kokuka Courageous, was damaged. Officials with the company said the tanker was struck above sea level by what appeared to be a shell. All 21 crew members on board were evacuated after it was hit for a second time. One person sustained light injuries. Reuters says the second tanker is owned by a Norwegian shipping company and that all 23 crew members have been evacuated. The U.S. Navy says it received 2 separate distress calls on Thursday morning. The U.S. Fifth Fleet, based in Bahrain, sent a ship to assist. Meanwhile, Iran state media reports that 44 people have been rescued by the country's navy from 2 tankers and have been taken to Jask on the Iranian coast. The Gulf of Oman lies at the entrance of the Strait of Hormuz. The incident comes a month after 4 tankers were attacked in the same area. Saudi Arabia and the UAE blamed an unnamed state actor. The U.S. says that actor was Iran, but Iran denies the allegations. Staying in the region, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says simmering tensions between the U.S. and Iran must not lead to unintended clashes.
Armed conflict needs to be prevented at all costs. Peace and stability in the Middle East are essential for the prosperity of this region, as well as the whole world. No one wants war. Japan will do all it can to ease tensions.
Abe is acting as a mediator of sorts between Washington and Tehran. In May last year, the U.S. unilaterally pulled out of a 2015 nuclear deal to curb Iran's nuclear program, despite international criticism. A year later, the Trump administration imposed the toughest ever sanctions against Tehran, a full international ban on imports of Iranian crude oil. The U.S. has since turned the screw even tighter, sending an aircraft carrier and bombers to the region.
If they did anything, if they do something, it'll be met with great force.
Iran countered almost immediately, announcing a halt to some of its commitments under the nuclear deal.
I will match threat with threat and measure with measure.
The standoff continues. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani insists the first step toward easing tensions lies with Washington.
A main cause of friction in this region is the American economic war against the people of Iran. America is imposing severe sanctions against the Iranian people. If this economic war is stopped, something extremely positive for this region, as well as the world, will happen.
Abe is urging Rouhani to stick to the deal. The Iranian president says he will if sanctions are lifted. He also expressed appreciation for Japan's support. Abe also met Iran's supreme leader on Thursday morning. He's the first G7 leader to meet Ayatollah Ali Khamenei since the U.S. pulled out of the nuclear deal.
Ayatollah Khamenei told me that Iran will neither produce nor possess nuclear weapons. He said it does not plan to do so and should not do so. There will be great difficulties on the path to détente, but we will continue our efforts for peace and stability in the region.
Abe says he conveyed his view on the stance of U.S. President Donald Trump. He also said it's extremely important the leaders of the countries involved are willing to ease tensions. But right after the summit, a series of telling tweets from Khamenei. One says the Supreme Leader doesn't consider the U.S. president a person deserving of dialogue. Abe's efforts aren't going unnoticed in Washington. The U.S. State Department welcomed his trip to Iran as Trump struck a more optimistic tone about diffusing the brewing conflict.
Hopefully, we'll be able to get along with Iran. If we can, that's great, and if we can't, that's great too.
Still, the U.S. Treasury Department conveyed a rather different message, a fresh round of sanctions against Tehran. They target an affiliate of Iran's Revolutionary Guard, itself designated a terrorist organization by the U.S. since April. Just last week, Washington listed Iran's largest petrochemical holding group as a target for economic sanctions.
My co-anchor Hideki Nakayama joins us from Tehran. So Hideki, what's the reaction there to Abe's summit talks?
The morning papers have been mostly favorable, casting Abe as an important mediator in the move to cool regional tensions. It's quite rare for any leader to meet the Iranian Supreme Leader, especially one so close to the U.S. president. This alone shows how much Tehran values Abe's visit. On Wednesday, his talks with Rouhani went on longer than planned. The Iranian president praised Abe's efforts to reduce tensions.
Now, what does Iran expect from Japan?
Rouhani says the tension stems from economic warfare by the U.S. Notably, he referred to Abe, saying Japan is keen to continue buying Iranian oil, currently on hold as Tokyo falls in line with U.S. sanctions. On the other hand, Abe didn't touch on anything related to the sanctions. This suggests a gap in what Iran wants and what Japan can offer. Iran's economy is crumbling. Its government is under pressure from the people it rules. Rouhani surely wants to use Abe's visit as proof that partners like Japan are still willing to engage. But the U.S. has just announced fresh sanctions against Tehran. Washington's pressure is not likely to fade anytime soon. Rouhani is surely counting on Japan, but Abe could have quite a long bridge to build for the two arch rivals.
Thank you, Hideki. Now we're joined by Koichiro Tanaka, a professor at Keio University, an expert on the Middle East. Great to have you with us, Professor.
Well, thank you always.
So before we get to the summit talks, let's discuss the attack on two tankers in the Gulf of Oman. What is your take?
Well, it's really alarming after a month or so that we've seen already sort of sabotage against tankers. And again, we're seeing that sort of an attack. And we really don't know who's behind it. Maybe a state actor, maybe not, a non-state actor. But we really have to be careful because that's the streamline that we usually use for the oil and natural gas exports, imports for our side.
Now, back to Iran-U.S. relations. How would you evaluate Prime Minister Abe's trip to Tehran?
Well, I think at this moment I can say that I have sort of a mixed feeling. Maybe he might have been able to diffuse the tension, at least for a while, but I don't think that's going to last forever. And we know that the Iranians are going to pick up with their nuclear activities by the next month, and that's going to cause even more tension. And we've already seen in the past that a person like National Security Advisor John Bolton trying to, stir up the issue and stir up even more tension in the region. So we can't be actually, confident on what's going to happen next. But so far, at least for the moment, Prime Minister Abe was able to, talk to the Iranians, convey what Mr. Trump had to tell them. But I'm, at the same time, a little bit disappointed here that he was only sort of a mere messenger rather than actually, acting as a negotiator.
But still, it was good that he made the move to go there.
Yes, because it was necessary. Without somebody talking to them, talking to both sides, it was quite likely that things would go out of hand.
And now we're still seeing no signs of compromise from Iran or the U.S. Mm-hmm. Will the tensions continue to escalate?
I believe so, yes. We've already seen from Ayatollah Khamenei's website, and also I recognize that on his website he did mention in bold red letters that in no way that we, meaning the Iranians, would repeat the bitter experience of negotiating with the United States. That was in bold red letters. So he was quite adamant that he's no longer in a position to allow, not himself, but also allow his subordinates like President Rouhani to hold negotiations with the United States.
Well, it seems like a real deadlock.
Well, yes, but we need to diffuse that. And I mean, we, meaning not only Japan, but the whole international community has to act on that. And there's not much enough time, not much time left for that to do, for us to do that. And we have to hurry, but at the same time, we have to be really careful of not, say, allowing the escalation to pick up again. And that's one of the things that I'm still concerned about.
But worst case scenario, if the situation continues to escalate, how would that affect the rest of the world?
Well, if something happens in and around the Persian Gulf region, it's going to cost us heavily. It's not only about Iran anymore, because at this moment we're not picking up any Iranian oil. But as a region, 80% plus of oil comes from that region. And when it comes to LNG, it's like 20% or so. And that's not only about Japan, it's about PRC, People's Republic of China, Republic of Korea, and also even Taiwan. So the entire East Asian countries are going to be affected by that. So that's going to be a real disaster if there's going to be some sort of a military conflict.
Now, what do you think the next move should be for Japan?
Well, I think we need to continue on trying to hold dialogue. I mean, at least sort of a negotiation, not only with the Iranians, but also trying to convince the Americans that they need to come back to the negotiating table, even them. They say that they're ready, but I think that they're not, because even when they talk about negotiations, they impose further sanctions, and that's no way of holding negotiations. So we need to express and also convince Washington that is not the way that things are going to happen. And apart from that, I think that we need to tell the Iranians and also to the people in Washington that this is a process. It's not a one-shot issue. So it's going to take time, but still it's going to be a process that we need to see what's going to happen next. Otherwise, this opportunity that we had might be abused by somebody like National Security Advisor John Bolton, that, okay, even the Japanese have tried the diplomatic negotiations, but the Iranians were not ready. So all the diplomatic avenues have been exhausted, so now it's time for war. So we shouldn't let that happen.
So persistence is very important.
Right.
Thank you so much for your insights.
Good to talk to you.